Hello and welcome. It's so good to have you with us. Today, we're going to explore a really profound passage from the Quran. It gets right to the heart of a timeless human struggle, that clash between what we expect from the divine and the reality of how guidance is actually delivered. It's a fascinating look at what we think we want versus, well, what we actually need. Okay, let's just dive right in. The whole conversation, the entire debate, kicks off with this one single complaint. And you'll notice it's not some deep theological question. It's an observation just dripping with disdain. They're basically looking at him and saying, "Really? This guy? What is this messenger that eats food and walks around in the marketplace like one of us?" It's this question that really sets the stage for everything that follows. And that brings us to our first major point. You see, their core objection was really more about aesthetics than anything else. They were looking for a luxury brand, a spectacle, something that looked impressive and powerful from the outside. But as we're about to see, guidance isn't about branding. Now, just look at this slide for a second because it lays out the disconnect so clearly. On one side, you've got their expectations. This whole VIP package, right? They want angels walking with him, treasure being bestowed upon him, a grand garden, a palace. And then you look at the other side, the reality. He walks in the markets, he eats food, he's a normal human being. It's this fundamental clash between their desire for a show and the simple reality of substance. So, what this really boils down to is a kind of spiritual snobbery. Think about it. They wanted a divine figure they could put up on a pedestal, someone they could admire from a safe distance. The absolute last thing they wanted was a messenger who would walk into their markets, challenge their daily ethics, their business deals, their social structures. An ordinary man made the divine message uncomfortably real. So let's move on and see how the divine response just completely reframes this entire argument. Because what they saw as a flaw, a deal breaker, the text presents as an intentional and absolutely crucial feature of the whole plan. It's not a bug, it's a feature. And wow, the response from God is immediate and it is powerful. It makes it crystal clear that this was never about capability. God says, "Blessed is he who, if he willed, could have made for you better than that. Gardens, palaces, you name it." The power was always there. The restraint, that was intentional. And this right here illustrates the core principle perfectly. If you give the prophet all those worldly riches, you'd just be confusing the truth with status. People would follow him for his wealth, not for the message. You see, guidance can't be baited with luxury, because if it was, you would never know if people were accepting the truth or if they were just chasing a payday. So when their main argument about wealth and status completely falls apart, look what happens. They just pivot to slander. But their accusations are all over the map. Is he a magician? Wait, no, he's a liar. Or maybe he's a poet. Or a madman. The text points this out to show that when you reject a clear truth for superficial reasons, all you're left with are confused, contradictory attacks. And this brings us to the pivotal question. If their arguments were so weak and all over the place, what was really going on? It was never really about the messenger's lifestyle, was it? The text now peels back that final layer to show us the true motive behind their denial. I mean, why put up such a fight over these superficial things? The text basically says that all these complaints about him eating food, walking in the markets, not having treasure, it was all just a smokescreen, a distraction from the real problem. And here it is. The real problem wasn't the messenger, it was the message. Specifically, it was the part of the message that says there is an hour, a day of judgment, a final audit of all our actions. They denied the audit because they didn't want their ethics, their lifestyles, and their choices to be held to account. Plain and simple. Okay, so now that we know the real issue is accountability, let's look at the incredibly stark choice and the ultimate consequences that the text presents. The passage lays out two very, very different destinies, and it all hinges on whether a person accepts or denies this final audit. For those who deny accountability, the text paints a vivid and honestly a terrifying picture. It describes this consequence that hears and sees them coming. The source material notes that the arrogance they showed in this life shrinks into pure desperation. Those who rejected all restraint are now completely confined. It's a sobering image. But then, in sharp, beautiful contrast, the reward for the righteous, for those who accept accountability, is described as total and eternal fulfillment. And the key phrase here is that this is a promise binding upon your Lord. See, unlike worldly promises that can change with the stock market, this one is a divine guarantee. It's locked in. So you see what the Quran is doing here? It's constantly creating this strategic contrast. It's asking people to just zoom out. It's asking, are you really willing to trade eternal fulfillment just to protect your temporary ego and avoid accountability in this short life? It's all a question of perspective. And with that, the passage brings the entire argument full circle. It concludes with this universal principle that brings it all right back home, making it relevant and real for every single one of us. The final verse is this decisive reality check. It says, hey, this has always been the model. We have never sent a messenger who didn't eat food or walk in the markets. A human messenger isn't a flaw in the plan. It is the plan. It's meant to be relatable. It's meant to be a test of our ability to see past the surface. So let's just break down this closing argument because it flows perfectly. First, it reaffirms the messenger's humanity is the whole point. Second, it tells us that we are a test for each other, the rich for the poor, the powerful for the weak, all of us for one another. Third, the key metric for passing this test? Patience. And finally, a crucial reminder. The ultimate auditor is ever seeing. Nothing gets missed in that final audit. And so, this is where we end. The entire passage, with all of its powerful arguments, its warnings, and its promises, it all boils down to this one single personal challenge. The text turns the mirror back on every one of us. Knowing that life is a mutual test and knowing that the true measure is patience, the only question left is the one we each have to answer for ourselves. Will you be patient? Thank you so much for joining me.